Hey, I'm Glenn and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you guys how I made this mobile closet, which is now essentially a part of my home. Whenever we have guests, I lose my office space, and the closet that's in the room right now, it is being occupied by all the things I use. So the way this is actually designed is a part of my current closet where I can roll this out, hand this over to the guests, and then they can utilize it as their space. Now, many of you may know that I keep a couple to-do lists. I have my personal to-do list, and I also have a YouTube to-do list where you guys ask me to make things and then I do my best to create them. This is coming off my YouTube to-do list, but it's actually something I need, so good job on the many requests of that. So I'm really happy with the way this came out. I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. So now that we got that out the way, it's time to start making. Let's go. For this project, I'll be using laminated pine. You could easily use plywood, but I didn't want to deal with the hassle of putting on edge banding. For whatever reason, the panels are not the same width. So what I decided to do was trim them all down to be the same width, and this way to make my job a little easier. Now, as you can see, this was a lot of back and forth, but eventually I was able to get through this process and start on the next. There's a great possibility that you could find boards that are all the same width. I just happened to pick up a few that was different. I laid each board out to give me a clear vision on the next step. I'm going to start by attaching the bottom and the top. And with everything lined up, I can now install the screws. Next, I'll repeat the same steps for the other side. As this began to take shape, I realized how much of a footprint this actually takes up. Depending on your workspace and how big of an area you work in, you may have to take this outside to assemble. Now I'm going to attach the panels on the open end. There will be one on each side. Since all of the screws were so close to the edge, I pre-drilled every hole before I installed a screw. Another thing to note is I use wood glue at every joint. Now I also noticed that I used the screwdriver far more than I expected to, and there wasn't any real reason behind it. It just wasn't that difficult. After a few turns, I started feeling a burn, and I was wondering, what the heck am I doing? Where is my screw gun? So I attached the other side, and I'll repeat the same process as I did for the first side. With both sides being attached, I can now stand the closet up and then add the back. Now, some pieces of the lumber were bowed, so I couldn't necessarily add the back while this was facing down. It was actually pretty difficult to attach the back while it was standing up. So in some areas, I had to use a clamp to hold things in place while I nailed it on. You don't necessarily need a nail gun for this project. You could use screws, but the nail gun just gives me a smaller area that I need to fill in later with wood filler. Next, I'm going to create some simple shelves, and I'll repeat the same process over and over again. These are really simple. All I did was attach a piece of wood to the front of the shelf, and that gave it a thick look to it. I shot 2 brad nails on the outside, and then I clamped the middle. You could also use pocket holes to join the front on as well, or you can just use glue. And here we have it, 4 shelves coming right up. It's going to be a little tough to get you right up in the cabinet, so I'm going to install these shelf support, and then I'm going to space those, the top ones, a little different from actually the bottom, so let's do it. To take the guesswork out of everything, I used this piece of wood as a spacer. Doing so would give me perfect spacing between the first 2 shelves. For the lower shelves, I used a larger piece of wood to give me a bigger space at the bottom. Of course, this is all done to taste, and you could perfectly space all of them from top to bottom. Now, I didn't glue these pieces, I just nailed them on, and you can also screw these in place as well. The shelves fit nicely, and that's what I was going for. I'm going to also repeat the same process, but making these a much larger shelf. In this opening, I'll end up putting a smaller space at the bottom for shoes. And then I put a wider gap above that for baskets and things like that, so you can put clothes in those. Unlike the smaller shelves, I'm going to glue these pieces in place and make them permanent. I'm going to fill in all the nail heads and imperfection in wood using wood filler. This is also a good time to look at the wood joints to make sure there isn't any cracks, and if there is, just fill it in with wood filler. I knew this project was going to take a lot of sanding. I'm only putting on a clear coat, so it's best if I go ahead and make it as neat and clean as possible. At this point, the day was almost over and mosquitoes started to come out, so I sanded what I could using 120 grit sandpaper, and then I came back the next morning and continued that on with 220 grit sandpaper. I also used the sander to round over the corners to knock off the sharp ends. With the structure and the drawers all sanded down, I can now go ahead and put the shelves in. Now you can fix all the shelves in place. I only fixed the one in the middle, this way the cabinet wasn't flimsy at this open end. The remainder of the shelves were left loose. Thought about using a brush to put on this polyacrylic, but then I thought about the hours that I'm going to put into this, and good thing I pulled out the sprayer because that made quick work of this. I only put on 2 coats as a quick layer of protection. You always want to make sure that you double check with a light just to make sure you didn't miss a spot. The last thing you want to do is have to pull this out again after you've cleaned up and put everything away. At this point I'm going to install the closet rod. And of course I need to put up 2 of these, and as a way of keeping these aligned I'm going to use a scrap piece of wood, which is the distance from one side to the center. The bottom corner of that will be my first screw hole. I was planning to buy threaded pipe because I thought it was going to be cheaper, but once I looked at the end price on that versus the actual price of the rod that would go in here, it was a no-brainer to just go with the rod that would go in here because it was much cheaper. All I had to do was cut the rod down to fit the space. You could go as crazy as you like and add all types of accessories, but I'm just going to add a hat hook that would also support a purse. I picked up 2 mirrors because I couldn't decide which color I would go with. I wanted to go with the white, but I thought the black would stand out a little more. I drilled 4 holes in the frame to mount it. The mirrors were just under $6 a piece. That was the main reason I picked up 2 of them. Now when you work alone, you have to do a little thinking outside of the box. So I was able to use my speed square to help support the bottom of the mirror while I can figure out where to center it and then mount it. And here I am again with the screwdriver. I don't know what it is about this project, but for whatever reason, I keep forgetting my power tools. Since I'll be traveling with this across the house, it just made sense to add casters. My suggestion would be to add lock-in casters, this way you can secure it in place and it's not rolling around while it's in use. I thought about putting a lamp on here, but I just didn't want to deal with the cord dangling all over the place. And as a quick solution, I found these motion activated lights that takes 4 AAA batteries. I'll link these down in the video description if you want to check these out and read up on them. They're fairly new to me, so I don't know how long the battery lasts on these. I bought a pack of 3 and they come with an adhesive magnetic back. They're not going to light up a closet or anything, but it's a good source of light for a small area or cabinet, or you may just want to get fancy and put some in your kitchen drawers or your office drawers. They're motion activated, so when there is no motion, the lights go off. And the main reason for this light is so that no one will run into the closet while walking around in a dark room. And here's the reveal, a mobile closet with tons of storage on it. So whenever your guests show up and they have this confused look on their face like, where do I put my things? Just roll this in there and say, I got you covered. Then you look at them and say, make yourself at home. And then you just turn around and walk away. That's probably a little rough, but you get the point. Well, let me get back on track. So I ended up replacing the mirror for the other one that I had installed because that one just didn't do it for me. There's a location to put your shoes, add a few baskets, and even lay out some of your loose accessories. And of course, you got a place to put your clothes and also a hat. And as I mentioned, since my office is the same room as the guest room, it's a shared space. So I need my office more than a guest would actually be occupying it. So when I'm not using this, it needs to get out of here. And that's why I designed it so that it fits in my closet. That way I can tuck it away. If you have a shared space like me, not a dedicated office, you may want to think about where would you want this to live as well. Since Leah touched the mirror, Leah needs to clean up after herself. Hey, you gotta start them early. And a big thank you to today's sponsor for making this possible. I'm sure many of you have heard of Squarespace by now, an all-in-one platform that allows you to easily create websites, amazing websites. And they're super proud on how easy it is to make one. There's no need to worry about dealing with complicated codings, and if you ever get stuck, they got you covered with their 24/7 customer support. So whatever your passion is, don't let anything stop you from sharing it with the world. It's simple to start. Just go to squarespace.com/DIY creators to get a free trial and 10% off your first purchase. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you ain't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, ring that bell so you get notified every time I post a new video. I'm very active on Instagram, so if you want to see what I'm working on next, be sure to follow me there at More DIY Creators. And that is it for this one. I'll catch you on the next one.